Hello and welcome to the Maths GCSE exam walkthrough for Foundation Edexcel paper 2, the one coming up very shortly. So what I've done is made a prediction of topics that are likely to come up in the Edexcel Foundation paper 2 exam. All of these are available to do on our website on maths.com. We also have a sister site on maths.uk if onmaths.com is having too much traffic, which it normally will do the day before the exam. So if you can't get onto the .com site, you can now use our .uk site, not .co.uk, just .uk. Both those links are put in the description below, so you can try it out online. It will mark itself, so you can type in the answers. All I've done for this video is done screen grabs of what's on my site. On the site also the numbers change, so your answers will be different to the ones I've got in the video, but if you follow the methods I go through, you should get the right answers. We're going to go through the complete paper, and hopefully this is help for your revision. If you do find it helpful, please click like and subscribe. Let's get started. So question 1 to get us started is up on the screen. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so quite a nice easy one to get us started. Write the number 3087 in figures. So we want to do 3000 in the thousands column. There's no hundreds, so we can put 0 there. 80 and 7. So if you just remember, this is the units, this is the tens, this is the hundreds, and this is the thousands. Okay, most of you probably won't have a problem with that. Write down the value of 8 in the number 0.18. So working with our place value, this is the units, and this is what's called the tenths, and the 8 is in the hundredths column. Okay, so the 8 is 8 hundredths. Okay, so they actually accept this as a fraction, or you could just write it as words. 8 hundredths is absolutely fine, but this is normally what they like to see as the answer. So write down 776 correct to the nearest 10. So to the nearest 10, we're looking at keeping these two numbers and getting rid of this number. Now if we get rid of this completely, we'll end up with 77. Now 77 is nowhere near 776, so we don't want to do that. What we want to do is replace that 6 with a 0. But before that 6 goes away, it's got to make a decision. It might change this number here. Okay, this number here might go to an 8, might go up 1 to an 8, or might stay the same at a 7. Now the choice is made because if this number is 5 or more, then this will go up. If this number is less than 5, then the 7 will stay as it is. Because 6 is 5 or more, that 7 will go to an 8. And this 7 here doesn't get changed. This 7 here could get changed if this was a 9, then that would have to be go to a 10, which would be a 0 here and a 1 here, but it's not. So a quick explanation of that using a number line. Okay, so let's draw out our number line. So we've got 770 and 780 are our nearest tens. Okay, and we're doing it to the nearest 10. So we've got to look at where this number is on this line. This number is about here. So it's closer to the 780. So that's why we have 780 as our answer. Now I know that that's quite a lot of explanation, but you know on the calculator paper you will have to round, whether it's a question on its own or just part of another question. So if you don't know how to round to the nearest 10, round to decimal places, round to significant figures, then I strongly advise you look into that now. Okay, let's move on to question 2. So if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so quite simple polygon question. That's what happens when your parrot flies away. Little joke. Okay, so what is the name of the polygon? So what I'm going to do is count the sides, but I'm going to put a notch next to them so I know I've counted it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I know that 8 sides is an octagon. And how I know that? Well, octopus has 8 legs, so octopus is 8. Okay, how many sides does a nonagon have? And it's just a matter of learning them. Nonagon's 9 sides. I always got pentagon and hexagon mixed up, and then someone said to me, the x in hexagon is the x in 6. Well, that makes it easier. So hexagon, because it has an x in it, it has 6 sides, and then pentagon is 5 sides. Just a little tidbit to help you out. Right, let's move on to question 3. So if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so pictograms didn't come up in paper 1, so they could come up in paper 2. It says, which day were the most DVDs sold? Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday? So it's giving me a choice between these 3. Now I know that the most, well, just looking at it, Tuesday has the most. Okay, you don't need to know what the key is, you can just see it's bigger. So my answer to that is Tuesday. I'm just going to say choose. Okay, how many DVDs were sold on Wednesday? Now it's tempting to say 2, but looking at the key, each of these represents 8. So it's 8 there and 8 there. And then I can use my calculator to do 8 plus 8, or hopefully most of you know that the answer is 16. Okay, and you do have a calculator. I know 8 plus 8 seems quite simple, but you do have a calculator for this, so please use it. The amount of people I've seen in mock papers and their actual exam papers who just make a silly mistake, 8 plus 8 equals 14 or whatever, and they've had a calculator in front of them, so check your answers. How many DVDs were sold on Tuesday? Now this is slightly more complicated because I know there's 8 there, and I know there's 8 there, but what does this represent? Well, if 8 is the whole, then how much is a quarter worth? Well, how many quarters are there in a whole? Well, there's 4. So each of those, well, let's have a think. If each of those equaled 1, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that's not 8. So let's have a try at 2. 2, 4, 6, 8. That's perfect. So each of those tiny sections, each of those quarters represents 2. So 2 there, and 2 down here. So that's the 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay, so his last question. It says, on Thursday 26 DVDs were sold. Show this information on the pictogram. Right, so we want 8 in there. So we want to shade that in, or draw a circle around it. So that's got 8 so far. Well, that hasn't got us far enough. We need another 8 in there. Okay, so that's another 8. Well, that's 16, so it's still not enough. I have another 8. I'm doing a very good job colouring these in, but anyway. Now that's 24. And if you're not sure, just do it on your calculator. 8 plus 8 plus 8, 24. Now we need another 2. So I'm just gonna shade in 1 quarter left. And that's another 2. And that equals 26. So we know we've got the right answer. Now some people, again, will shade these in like I'm doing. And I've sort of started, so I'll finish. Actually, with these pictograms, they don't mind you just drawing the circles. Okay, just make it obvious that this last one is a quarter, like that. Okay, So these will normally be circles or squares for a pictogram. Okay, because they try and keep the drawing simple, because this is a maths exam and not an art exam. Okay, let's move on to question 4. If you'd like to pause the video, before I do that, I think there's 2 sections to this, so I'll put the other section up. Okay, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so some simple fraction questions. Okay, looking at this shape, half of it is shaded. Okay, we've got half of the top bit and half of the bottom bit, so half in total. But what is half as a percentage? Well, percentages are all out of 100%. So what's half of 100? Well, it'd be 50. So it'd be 50%. What fraction the shape is shaded? So for our fraction, the bottom will be the total amount of squares. So there are 4 at the bottom, 4 at the top, so that's 8 in total. And how many are shaded? Well, 3 of them. So it would be 3 over 8. Shade in a fifth. Well, what's a fifth of the top row? Well, there's 5 squares there, and a fifth would be 1 of the 5. So I'm going to shade in 1 of the 5 at the top. And at the bottom, well, there's 5 squares, and I want to shade in 1 of them. Okay, 1/5, if you think about it, if you double top and bottom, you get 2 over 10. So we've got 10 squares here, and we've shaded in 2 of them. So that's the same as 1/5. Okay, in this last question, write down 2 fractions that are equivalent to a quarter. What might help me here is if I do a quarter and then just write down some equivalent fractions. So I'm going to times top bottom by 2. I'm going to times top bottom here by 3. I'm going to times top bottom here by 4. You might see a pattern here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 8, 12, 16. It's the 4 times table at the bottom. I'm going to do it again, one last time. Times it by 5, so it'd be 5 over 20. Well, that should probably be enough. So 4 over 12, well, that's not going to be right, because it's 4 over 16. 7 over 28, well, we're not sure yet on that one. 4 over 16, well, that's perfect, because that's in our list. And 3 over 10, that's not in our list, it's 3 over 12, so that's not going to work. And 5 over 15, well, it's 5 over 20. Okay, so let's keep going to see whether 7 over 28 is. So it would be 6 over 24 and 7 over 28. So yes, that is in it. So the answers are B and C. Those are our 2 answers. Brilliant. It looks like we're halfway towards a G grade, which doesn't sound glamorous, but we're only on question 4, so it sounds good to me. Question 5, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so angles did not come up on paper 1 at all. I don't think in any question, so we know angles are going to be quite important in paper 2. So it says work out the size of angle marked X. So I know that X and this have to add up to 180, because all angles on a straight line add up to 180. Okay, so if I do 180 take away 135, then I'll find out what X is. Well, I've got a calculator, so 180 take away 135 equals 45. So 45 degrees. Let's check that works. So 45 plus 135 equals 180. Give a reason for your answer. So angles here, or angles on, should say, a straight line add to 180 degrees. Okay, this pen's not the best at writing. My handwriting is moderately better than that normally. Not much, but moderately better than that. Okay, so what type of angle is angle X? So, with types of angle, there are 4 types. Okay. There are acute, which are less than 90 degrees. If I do the thing like that. There is a right angle, which is equal to 90 degrees. There is obtuse, which is between 90 and 180. And then there are reflex angles, which are above 180. They're the really big ones, the ones that bend back. Okay, if you had to do that position in gymnastics, you would not be a happy bunny, I think. Well, I wouldn't be a happy bunny. So, looking at that, we've got acute as a small one. Like a cute creature, I always think. Like cute is normally small. Right angle, which is 90, has to be 90. And then obtuse, which is sort of like a normal angle, bigger than acute, bigger than a right angle. And then you've got this reflex, which is the bent back one. Okay, well, so clearly that is acute, because it's less than 90 degrees. Okay, that's our answers. Right, let's move on to question 6. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, first thing I need to say is that this is a divide sign. It hasn't really come out that well, so it should be a divide sign there. So if you want to pause the video now and just change your answer, whatever, that's fine. But if you saw that that was a divide sign, let's carry on. So the input is 10, so that's 10. That's saying, right, divide it by 2, so that would give us 5, because 10 divided by 2, just do on the calculator, 10 divided by 2 is 5. Then that says plus 6, so on the calculator, plus 6. And that gives us 11 as an output. So that's 11, that's nice and easy. This time, it says the input is 16, and the output is 40. Okay, it seems quite interesting, so we've got to find the function here. Okay, so 16 take away 6 is 10. So we've got to find a way of getting from 10 to 40. Well, there's 2 answers here. I could add 30. That would work. That would be absolutely fine as an answer. On the drop down on the website, it didn't give you that choice. But another choice that we could use, which was on the website, is times by 4. And that's what it was looking for on the website. But in the exam, you'd get a mark for either of those. Okay, remember, it has to be one function. You can't say times 2 add 20. Okay, that would be 2 functions. And here it's just 1. Okay, on a function machine or a number machine, these boxes represent one thing you're doing to a number. Fantastic, let's move on. Question 7, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so shop A and shop A, wow. It should probably be shop B, I would have thought. Let's change that. Note to self, change it on the site. Right, moving on. So 3 rulers for £1.50 and 5 rulers for £2. What's the cheapest price for 45 rulers? Okay, so for shop A, let's do shop A first. So shop A. So it says that 3 rulers cost £1.50. Let's do it in pence, 150. So if I work out what 1 ruler is first, and to do that I divide it by 3. Okay. And you can probably do this in your head, but we've got a calculator. 150 divided by 3 is 50. So those rulers are going to be 50p each. Okay. I then can times that by 45 to find out what 45 rulers are going to be. Okay, so it's times that by 45. So 50 times 45 is 2250 pence. Okay, this is all in pence. Right, let's do shop B. So 5 rulers, it says costs £2, which is 200 pence. So let's work out what one ruler is. So 200 divided by 5 is 40. Okay, well, how we've done that is we've divided both sides by 5. We've divided this side also by 5, which you have to do. If you do divide one side by 5, you've got to do the other. And then again, we're going to times it by 45. Times this by 45. So 40 times 45 is 18. So 45 rulers is 1,800 pence. Okay, so what is the cheapest price for 45 rulers? Well, this is £22.50 and this is £18, so it's going to be £18. Now, just a little note, some people are screaming at the PC saying, why didn't you just times these by 9? So if I times these by 9, I get 45 and this gives me 18. And why didn't you just times these by 15? If I times these by 15, I get 45. And 1.5 times 15 is 22.5. Or £22.50. That's absolutely fine. Okay. The reason I go down to 1 is because 1 will always work, no matter whether you can go straight there or whether you have to go down to 1. 1 will always work for you. But if you find a way like that, brilliant, go for it. Okay, this is a calculator paper, so I would expect them to maybe not always go directly to the number you're looking for. And the easiest way of getting there is go to 1 first and then work your way back up again, like the methods I've shown you. So the methods I've shown you will work with every question like this. The method I showed you afterwards will only work if the numbers are working in your favour, if they've been quite nice to you. And we know Edexcel aren't always necessarily nice to you on these papers. Okay, let's move on. Question 8, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so nice coordinate question. Write down the coordinate of point A. Now, with coordinates, we go along the corridor, so 2, and then up the stairs, 1. So it's 2 to the right and 1 up from the centre. Okay. Write down the coordinate of point B. This time we're going left, 1, 2, 3. So it's -3. Okay, so it says -3 there. And then we're going up, 1, 2, 3. So we're going up 3. So it's -3, 3. Remember, you always do this one first, and then this axis, the X, and then the Y. Okay. Which coordinate on the grid is at the coordinate -2, -3? So this is our X, and this is our Y. This is how far across, so -2, and this is the -3 is how far down, so 1, 2, 3. So it's point C. Okay, which two coordinates are on the grid are on the line y equals -2? Okay, this is a lot harder, or people find this a lot harder. With this, where does y equal to? Well, I've told you this is the y-axis, so where does it equal -2? It equals -2 here, but it also equals -2 here, here, here. In fact, if I draw a line across, it equals -2 all the way along this line. So when it asks me which two coordinates are on y equals -2, it is D and E. Okay, and that's it. Let's move on. And I think we're almost there. So question 9, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so you'll probably notice we're going to jump grades pretty quickly now. There's a long wait until you actually get your first grade, but when you do, you rattle through them quickly. So let's do that. This first one says b plus b plus b, simplify. Now, if that was, say, 10, 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30, okay? You could actually work out what it is. So let's just write that down. So 10 plus 10 plus 10, okay? Well, we know it's 30, but is there a different way of writing this? Well, there is. Okay, you wouldn't do this on a calculator, especially if there were 100 of them. Okay, you wouldn't write plus 10, plus 10, plus 10. For this, you would just do 3 times 10. Okay? And we have to have the times there, otherwise that looks like 310, and that wouldn't look good. In fact, that's not what 3 times 10 is. So we have to put the times there. With these, b plus b plus b, there's 3 of them, so just like I did with the tens, I could say 3 times b. But now we don't need the times sign there, because 3b, every mathematician across the world knows that that means 3 times b. Okay, it's not the same problem as we had here, as that looking like 310. Here, 3b, well, that's just 3 times b. You walk up to any mathematician in any country, okay, obviously who have our alphabet, and they'll say, oh yeah, that's just 3 times b. Okay, probably in a different language if they don't speak ours. Okay, 13f, take away 4f. So that's 13 lots of this number, which we don't know what it is. Take away 4 lots of this number. So, on my calculator, I'm going to do 13, take away 4. And that says 9. So it's 9 lots of that number. We don't know what that number is, but we had 13 of it. We took away 4 of it. So therefore we've got 9 of it, whatever it is. Okay, and we never find out what f is, but we don't need to for that question, because we've simplified it. Right, this follows the same rule that we had earlier. 4ab, 4 times a times b is just 4ab. Okay, because that's not 400 and aeb, okay? We know that that's 4 times a times b, because whenever a number and a letter, or a letter and a letter, are next to each other in maths, it means we times them. Okay, this is a slightly harder-ish question. Okay, this involves different letters. Okay, and this is called collecting like terms. So we've got a 3x here and a plus 5x. That plus belongs to that 5x. Okay, some people think that they're sort of 2 different things. No, they're not. They're one thing. So 3x plus 5x, well, that equals 8x. 3 plus 5. 3 lots of that number plus 5 lots of that number is 8 lots of that number. Okay, and we've got the plus 5y and the minus y. Remember, that minus belongs to that y. So what is 4y? Take away a y. Well, it'd be 3y. So our answer is 8x plus 3y. Now you might be confused a little bit with this because there's no number here. Well, we don't need a number here. Yet again, all mathematicians know that that's just minus 1y. Okay, but if we all know that minus y means minus 1y, similarly, that a there means 1a, that b there means 1b. In fact, these b's here are 1b plus 1b plus 1b, which was 3b. Okay, so whenever there's no number before the letter, we all know it's a 1. Some people say, well, if I just have a b, what number's there? Some people will say 0. Well, if there was a 0 there, 0 times anything equals 0. So the mathematician wouldn't write 0b, they would just write 0. So there's not a 0 there, there's a 1 there. Okay, that's a lot of algebra talk, but I think it's worth it if you followed me. If we got that right, and we got all of the ones right so far, you are at a G, but there's loads more questions left to try and pick up more marks. So you're not going to get a G, but you are currently at a G, which is excellent. Question 10, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so this question's inspired by one that came up a few years ago on the Edexcel paper. I don't know if it was on the foundation, it was definitely on the higher, but it is a foundation topic, which is why I sort of put it in there in case they put up something similar to this. Now, if you don't know anything about electricity bills, which I'm pretty sure most 15-16-year-olds have no idea about, then this question probably comes a lot harder. Basically, what happens is in some houses you have a constant counter counting the amount of electricity you're using. Some people have a pay-as-you-go card, which is slightly different and doesn't work like this. But those people who are with a meter, they have a guy who comes around and reads the meter. He literally reads the number that you have in your house. Now, the one in this question, their old reading, last time this guy came around, was 6827. Their new reading, currently what they're at, is this. So the first thing to work out is the difference between those two. You want to do 6960 take away 6827. I'll just do it in the calculator. So 6960 take away 6827. And that equals 133. So this person has used 133 units. Okay, and they're just called units. Now the price per unit is 17p. So each one of those units is going to cost 17p. So the next step is 133 times 17. So let's times that by 17. And I get 2,261 pence. Question doesn't want it in pence, it wants it in pounds. So I divide that by 100. I could do it on the calculator, divide by 100. Okay. And I get £22.61. And that's our answer. Okay, let's move on to question 11. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so you've got to be prepared that they're going to use shape and algebra. Okay, it's something that they always have done and always will do. So these two questions here are to try and get you comfortable with that. And actually, these questions they could easily ask, so that's why I put them in. Now, people have stared at this question for hours and not had a clue how to do it. It's a heck of a lot easier than you might have thought. What some of you might have done is worked out the perimeter of this. Yeah, actually, a lot of these questions you do. Or some of you might wanted to try and work out the area. But since it doesn't tell us what the area or perimeter are, then that's not going to help us. It's as simple as this. What do you know about the opposite sides of a rectangle? Well, they're equal. So x plus 1 is equal to 10. This one here, this length here, is equal to this length here. Okay? What plus 1 equals 10? Well, what I can do is solve it. Okay, and some of you are screaming the answer now because you know straight away. That's not a problem. What I want to do is get x on its own. So it says plus 1, so I do the opposite of that, and I take away 1 both sides. So therefore x equals 9. And most of you will see that 9 plus 1 equals 10. Let's see if it works on the other sides. 9 take away 1, well, that does equal 8. Therefore x is 9. Okay, this one here, this time we have an algebra, but we have nothing else, and we don't, like this one, have an opposite side or anything. Now, what do we know about the angles in a triangle? Well, the angles in a triangle add up to 180. So, with this question, it's always best to have the algebra on one side and the number on the other. Okay? Both of these things, both of these sides represent the amount of angles in that triangle. One does it in algebra and one as a number. We know that it is 180 as a number. But what is in algebra? 2y plus 3y plus y. That's going to be 6y in total. So in algebra it's 6y, but as a number we know it's 180. So we get those equal to each other. Now, I said do the opposite of the plus 1 earlier, so we took away 1. Well, what is that 6 doing to the y? Well, that's timesing it by 6. So what's the opposite of times 6? Well, divide 6. So we're going to divide 6 both sides. We get y equals, and I'm going to use my calculator, 180 divided by 6, yeah, 30. So y is therefore 30. Okay, fantastic. Let's move on, and we're currently on an F if we've got everything right so far. I said the grades would be going up quickly, and they are. So, question 12. Pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so basic sequence question. Okay, I haven't put in an nth term one, but that would be probably quite wise to do as well, to revise. First of all, what is this going up in? Well, that's going up in 5. That's going up in 5. That's going up in 5. You can see where I'm going here. That's going up in 5. So, what's the next one? Well, it would be 26, because it's going up in 5. How did you get to your answer? Add 5. Yeah, that's what we call the rule. Okay, show that 50 is not in the sequence. Now I've put this last bit because I can't have writing, I can't mark writing automatically, but I've said just show me the term directly lower than it. Well, what do you notice about all these numbers? Well, they all end in a 6 or a 1. Okay, you know the 5 times table always ends in a 0 or 5. Well, this is one more than the 5 times table each time. Okay, so 0, 5, 10. In fact, actually it's 4 less, because this would be a 5 and now it's a 1. Okay, this would be a 10, now it's a 6. So the number directly lower than it, well, 41 would be in the sequence. 46 would be in the sequence. 51 would be in the sequence. Well, clearly 50 is not going to be, but the number directly lower than it is 46. But in the actual exam, I would show that 46 and 51, and I'd write they all end in a 1 and a 6. Okay, or I'd carry on this sequence. If that number is small enough, which I think it is, I would carry on this sequence and show that 50 is not in it. Now, if you wanted to do the nth term, I can go for it now. Whatever it's going up in, okay, put before the letter n, so it's 5n. Now this would give us the 5 times table. Okay, so it would give us 5, 10, 15, okay, which is not what we want. To find out what else we need to put for the nth term, you go back 1. If we're adding 5 going forwards, then we're going to subtract 5 to find this one, and that would be minus 4. And whatever it is, we put at the end, so it's 5n minus 4. Okay, fantastic. It didn't ask for the nth term, there weren't any marks for that on my mock paper, but the point of this paper is to prepare you for all questions, so I thought I'd just add that in to show you. So, question 13, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so you've got to prepare for these more functional questions where there's a scenario, and they're impossible to predict, but all you can do is just practice questions that are functional and trying to get your head around what you're supposed to do in them. Okay, so planning a holiday to a theme park. These are all fixed costs, so these are just one-offs, but this is per person. This is how much he charges, this is how much he sells. So, first thing, I'm going to work out the fixed costs. They're the things that it doesn't matter how many people go, they'll stay the same. So 240 plus 60 plus 40. I'm going to type that into my calculator. I'll show you the working out. So 240 plus 60 plus 40. Okay, equals 340. So she's going to have to pay £340 even if one person goes, or if 1,000 people go, she'll still have to pay 340. Okay, so let's work out the entrance cost. next. So that's £12 per person, and it says she sells 100 tickets. So times that by 100. So I do have my calculator, but I don't need to. That's 1,200. Okay, and these are all in pounds. Okay, right. So that's the cost there. Okay, so total cost. So costs is the fixed cost which we worked out plus the entrance. So it's going to be £340 plus 1,200. So 340 plus 1,200. So it's going to cost her £1,540. Okay, and that's that done. We've done this bit here. Okay. Now she charges £16 per ticket. Okay, so money raised. Okay, so it's £16 times 100 because she sold 100 tickets. And again, don't need to do this on the calculator, but it's there, so we might as well just check. It is 1,600. Now, that's how much money she's got. That's how much money she has to fork out. Okay, so I'm going to do last one, profit. Now, profit is all the money she got. Okay, that's how much money she raised. But take away all the costs that she had to pay out. Okay, so 1,600, take away 1,540 equals 60. Okay, most of you probably would be able to do that without a calculator, but you've got a calculator, so you might as well use it. So she's got £60 left, and she's donated any extra money to the school fund. How much does she donate? £60. That's how much money she had left. Oh, now the way I've set that out is not necessarily, I've not picked the best words, but the marker knows exactly what I've done. And for these questions, for 4 marks, even if you don't get the right answer, if you set your work out really clearly what you're doing each step of the way, you can normally get 2 or 3 marks just from doing even the most basic bits of the question. If the question involves something much harder, like area of a circle, which you just can't remember how to do, instantly it's pi r squared. But say if it involves that, but you can do the first bit of the question, then do the first bit of the question. The markers generally are desperate to try and give you marks, and they'll search through all your working out, but it's a lot easier for them, from experience, a lot easier for them if you label the stuff and say, right, I'm doing the fixed cost, I'm doing the entrance, so the total costs, and I could write total there, total costs. Okay, just makes it so much easier for markers to give you the marks. Okay, let's move on to question 14. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so simple substitution. Now, because we've got a calculator, there's quite an easy way of doing this. I'm going to write this out, but instead of A, I'm going to put in what A is 6. Okay, plus 6 times, instead of B, I'm going to put brackets minus 6. Okay, if you type that into your calculator, 6 times 6 plus 6 times bracket minus 6, close bracket, then you should get the answer of 0, okay? Because this is going to give us 36, and this is going to give us minus 36, okay? So the answer to this is 0, okay? Now, the reason I put brackets around it is just to make that clear to the calculator that that's a negative 6, okay? And it just makes the calculations a lot easier just to write down and type into your calculator. Okay, common mistake with this question. Okay, common mistake is to do 5 times 5, because x is 5, and then square it. But BIDMAS tells us, or BODMAS tells us, that we've got to do the squared first. So we have to do 5 times the 5 squared. Okay, So if I do 5 times 5 and then press the squared button on the calculator, it will do 5 squared, which is 25, then times it by 5, which is 125. Okay, be careful with that. Don't do 5 times 5, then press equals, and then square it, because you'll get the answer of 625, which is not correct for that question. Okay, let's move on. And by the way, if we've got 100% so far, you are currently at an E for this prediction, which is great. Let's move on though. Question 15, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so I normally, from day one in secondary school, bang on about how students should have their own scientific calculators. And it's questions like this that I think can really throw you if you're borrowing a calculator. So if you haven't got one already, go out and buy one. Okay, and some teachers say, oh, you don't need a scientific calculator, you're doing foundation. That's rubbish. This question is a lot easier with a scientific calculator. If you have a scientific calculator, all you have to press is the fraction button, and I will show you what that looks like. It's a line with a square at the top and a square at the bottom. This is on the Casio ones, which are the most common ones. It looks like that. Okay, it is, you go to the shift at the top left and go down 2, and that brings up a fraction, and then at the top you press square root 74.3. okay, use the cursor button, okay, which is the sort of circular button there beneath the screen, to press down, and it goes down to the bottom, and you just type in 97.5 take away 81.1, and that calculator does everything for you. Just press equals and it brings up the answer for you. And I'm just going to type in what the calculator says: 0.525594193. Okay, don't go crazy. Actually, most exams only really need about 6 of these, 6 decimal places, because some calculators actually don't show that many numbers. Okay, right, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Now, if you don't have a scientific calculator, if you have one of the sort of rubbishy ones that don't really do very much, but they do have to have a square root on them, just do the top, write down the answer, do the bottom, write down the answer, and then do the top divided by the bottom. Okay? Right, let's move on. So, 4 decimal places it wants. So, 4 decimal places is 1, 2, 3, 4, and I draw a line down. Okay? So these numbers are safe. These numbers here are doomed. But, like we did earlier with rounding, this number has a decision to make. Okay? If it's 5 or more, that 5 will go up to a 6. If it's less than 5, that 5 will stay exactly the same. That number never goes down. Okay? That 9 is 5 or more, so that will turn to a 6. So it's 0.5256. Brilliant. Okay, let's move on. Question 16. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so we've got a lovely mode, range, median and mean question. So let's have a look. First thing to do is the mode. Now mode means most common, so 13 comes up 1, 2, 3 times. I'm just going to write that down. 13 is 3. 14 comes up once, so it's not going to be 14. 11 comes up once. 10 comes up twice. 15 comes up twice. Okay, so there's nothing else that comes up 3 times, therefore 13 is the mode. The range is the biggest, take away smallest. So looking there, I think the biggest is 16, I think, and the smallest I think is 10. So it's 16 take away 10, which is 6. The median, now the median I've got to write them in order. So 10, I'm going to cross them out. So I cross them out as I go, yeah. I'll use the highlighter to cross them out. So 10. I don't need the commas. So 10, 11, 13, and I know there's 3 of those. So we can get rid of those. 14, 15, 15, 16, 14, 15, 15, 16. Brilliant. Okay, so they're in order of size. Okay, and I'm going to pick the middle one. So the way I'm going to do that is cross off one from both sides, then cross off another from both sides, then cross off another from both sides, then cross off another from both sides, and I'm left with 13 and 13 in the middle. So I could add them together and divide by 2, or find the halfway point, but the halfway number between 13 and 13 is 13. So the median's 13. Now if those two numbers were, say, 13 and 14, okay, then halfway between those is going to be 13.5. Okay, they're not, so they're just 13. Calculate the mean. Okay, so I need to add them all up. So 10 plus 10 plus 11 plus 13 plus 13, marked up, plus 13 plus 14 plus 15 plus 15 plus 16 equals 130. So let's check I'm on the right thing. Yeah. So 130. And I need to divide it by the amount of numbers, which there's 10. So that's going to equal 13. Now, I always double check this. So I'm going to do 10 plus 10 plus 11 plus 13 plus 13 plus 13 plus 14 plus 15 plus 15 plus 16. 130. Okay, so I know it's right. And the reason I double check that is when you're typing that many numbers into the calculator, you're always likely to make mistakes. And always make sure you use the original numbers when you add them together. Because if I'd made a mistake when I'd written out these numbers, then this answer would be wrong as well. Okay, right, excellent. So at an E, almost a D, which is great. Let's move on to question 17. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so for this question, some teachers hate me going through this, but I'm going to do it. For this question, we can use a triangle. Speed, distance, time triangle. Okay, speed and time are at the bottom, and distance at the top. And the beauty of these triangles is they show you how to work out the values. So we're looking for a distance. So if I cover that up, it tells me to do speed times time. Okay, the speed is 40. The time is 3, so it's 40 times 3, which I can do in my calculator. 40 times 3, 120. So the answer is 120 miles. Always double check the units. This is miles per hour, this is in hours, and this is in miles, so it's fine. Right, Richard drives 520 kilometres the next day. Look how much further he travelled. So we need to get 520 kilometres into miles. Okay. So we've got 520 kilometres, and we need that into miles. Okay, so what I can do is I can divide that by 8 and then times it by 5. Okay, let's try and think of a better way of showing that. So I would say, right, so let's type that in. So 520 divided by 8 times by 5. And that says it's 325 miles. Okay, let's check if that makes sense. 5 miles is 8 kilometres. So that's just less than double the amount of miles. So if you double the amount of miles, you'd get 10, and 8 is just less than 10. So 325, so that's roughly 300. Doublet is 600, and 520 is less than that. Okay, so it just looks right. So to convert between kilometres and miles, you divide by 8, then times by the 5 there. If you're not sure, there's some great revision guides and online videos of how to convert the two. So 325. Also, just let me know, maybe I'll do a video on converting units. Okay, let's move on. Question 18, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so scatter graphs did not come up at all, so it's worth having a look at. Whenever I look at a scatter graph like this, what am I thinking of drawing, whether the question asked me or not? Line of best fit. I can't help myself, and you shouldn't be able to either. For the line of best fit, they are very, very liberal over what you can get away with. Now, some of you might say, well, actually, there's more underneath that line than on top. You will get away with it, okay? You will get away with an awful lot of things with line of best fit. As long as it's roughly right, and as long as it goes with the data, and there's roughly some on top and some below, you'll get the marks. But I've not even read the question yet. That's how confident I am in drawing my line of best fit, because you won't lose a mark for drawing it, but on most questions they won't ask you to draw it anymore, they will just expect you to. We'll maybe see whether that's true on this question. So describe the relationship between maths and history results. Okay, so it's positive because it's going up. And if it asks for the relationship rather than the type of relationship, be careful, because sometimes you need to say, as maths results increase, history results increase. Okay, so that's the other option. Right, another student got 34 on their history test. Estimate what they got on their maths test. Okay, so let's get some 90-degree line. There we go. So 34 in history. So I'm not very good at reading these. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to draw a line across until I get to my line of best fit, which this question didn't ask me to draw, but you needed to answer this question. And then when it hits the line of best fit, I'm going to go down. And to me, that is 21, 22, 23. That to me is 23. Oh, if I can write. So 23. Now, if you're worried about doing this properly on the website, I'm very liberal with the answers. Okay, they won't necessarily be in the exam, but I know that reading off the screen is quite difficult. So for that, I would have accepted anywhere between 20 and 30. But on the actual exam, draw your line of best fit, draw your line across, and draw it going down. Or they might give you a maths result and ask you for a predicted history one. So draw the lines on the exam, because if you are off, then you will probably sometimes get full marks, even if your answer is not what they're looking for, because you've shown how you've got the right answer. You would at least get 1 out of the 2 marks if you've shown the line of best fit and the line across and down, or up and left. Okay, fantastic. Let's move on. We're at a D grade if we've got 100% so far. So let's see how close we are to a C grade after this next one. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so there's quite a few rules going on this one. One rule we've used earlier is angles on a straight line. So 180 take away 102 equals 78. So I know that that's 78 degrees. Notice I'm not going straight for x because I can't work out x straight away. I've got to find some other values first, okay? And just on this type of question, always go for angles you know. So it doesn't have to be the x value straight away. Just label angles you know. Second one I know is this one here, because the bottom 2 angles in an isosceles are always equal. Okay. Now the next one I know, because these are parallel lines, this one here and this one here will add up to 180 because they're interior angles or allied angles. So I've already done that calculation. That would be 78 degrees. I also know angles in a triangle add up to 180. So 78 plus 78, 78 plus 78 is 156. And if I do 180, take away 156, 180, take away 156, I get 24. Okay, so this angle here is 24 degrees. And finally, I know that angles on a straight line add up to 180, so I'm going to do 78 plus 24, which is 102, and then 180 minus 102, which equals 180 minus 102, which equals 78. So the answer is 78. Now I've not written all those steps down because this pen will probably die if I try and do that much writing, but I would heavily recommend you do it because normally it will say give reasons for your answers or something like that where you have to do the working out, or it'll put a star next to it, say right, quality of written communication, which just basically means you showing you're working. Okay, you'll notice also that, let's get my highlighter line, that this is symmetrical down the middle. So that's 78, that's 78, that's 78, that's 78, that's 102, and that one there would be 102. Okay, but you don't necessarily know how to prove that. You've got to find these angles out, and then you'll notice that it is perfectly symmetrical. Okay, let's move on to question 20. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, reading your comments, a lot of you were distraught of the lack of stem and leaf diagrams on paper 1. Stem and leaf diagrams are going to be changing for the next spec. They are still on it, but I don't think you need to draw them anymore. You just need to be able to interpret them. So it could be that they're saving stem and leaf diagrams for a goodbye hurrah, or it could be that they just aren't doing stem and leaf diagrams. We'll only know when you do the exam. But in case they are, we're going to do a stem and leaf diagram. Now, there's 3 marks, 1 for ordering, 1 for drawing the stem and leaf diagram, and 1 for the key. And those marks haven't changed in God knows how long. So the first thing to do is realise how to draw a stem and leaf diagram. So we're going to order it, which means put it in order of size. So I'm going to pick the smallest one first, so 21. Instead of writing 21 here, the 20 is already written for me. Okay, that's the point of a stem and leaf diagram. You only have to write the units. Okay, so that's 21 done. 23 is next. 24 is next. Then I think there was a 28. There we are. Okay, 32 comes up twice. So it doesn't matter which order I put these in because they're the same number. Okay, 40 comes up next. And to do 40, you just put the 0. 43, 49, and then 54. Okay, so that's 2 out of the 3 marks. For the key, it doesn't actually matter what number you pick. So I always pick the first one. So 2 line 1 means 21. Okay, sometimes they don't even tell you to do the key, but you've got to do it anyway. Now some of you go, well, what's the point of the key? Well, it could be, and this isn't part of my working out, don't write this in your exam, but it could be that 2 line 1 means 2.1, and these could have all been decimals. This bit here would look identical. You wouldn't have any decimal points in this, but the key would be 2 line 1 equals 2.1. Okay, that's not part of my answer, but that's an explanation of why you would do that. And actually, in your exam, they could all be decimals, and that's the way of doing it. You just show it with the key. This bit here would look identical if they were decimals. So there we are. That's a prediction. If they are all decimals, you all should buy me a box of chocolates, or maybe not. Just like me on YouTube. That's good enough. Right. If you've got 100% so far, you are at a C. The reason we continue now is because if you dropped any marks at all, these are the questions from now on that are going to save the day and get you the C grade. So, question 21, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so for this one, the 157 bus leaves every 22 minutes. So it's going to leave 22 minutes, then it's going to leave 44 minutes, and you can just keep adding 22 in your calculator if you want to. Then 66 minutes. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Then the 183 bus leaves 33 minutes, and then 66 minutes. And as soon as you get a number in both lists that's the same, which I have here, you've found the lowest common multiple. And this is all this question is. It's about lowest common multiple. So 66 minutes, well 66 minutes isn't on a clock, because when you get to 60 it becomes an hour. So that's 1 hour and 6 minutes. Okay. Looking at this, they start at 9 o'clock. That's when they start. And we know that they will be together in 1 hour, 6 minutes. Okay. And 9 o'clock plus an hour would be 10 o'clock plus 6 minutes would be 10:06. That's when they'll both be released at the same time again. Okay, the whole question looks really complicated, but then it's actually asking a very simple thing. Okay, when does 22 and 33, when do they collide? Okay, right, let's move on. Question 22. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, this is quite a horrible question involving fractions and ratios. So Denver gets 7/19. So how much does Engel and Fido get? Well, with fractions, the totals add up to 1, and 1 is 19/19. So what do I add to this to get 19/19 rather than 7/19? So I do 19 take away 7 is 12. So they're going to get 12/19. If Denver gets 7/19, between them they're going to get 12/19. Okay, that's not the easiest thing in the world to get your head around. Okay, so they're both together getting 12/19, but they're sharing it in the ratio. So E and F, with Engel getting 5 parts and Fido getting 2 parts. Okay, so in total there's 12/19. Okay, and they're sharing it in that ratio. Okay, so we've got to find the fraction. What we're looking for? We're looking for Fido's share. So what's the fraction of what's the fraction that he's getting of this amount? Okay, well, in total there are 7, and he's getting 2 of them. So he's getting 2/7 of the total, and then Engel's getting 5/7 of that total remaining. Okay, so together they're getting 12/19, and then he's getting 2/7 of that. Not easy. So to find the answer, you do 12/19, that's how much they're getting together, and then I times it by 2/7, because that's his share of that 12/19. Okay, so on the calculator, I press the fraction button, 12/19, 12/19, and then I press the cursor to the right to get out the fraction, then times fraction button again, 2/7, and I get 24/133. If you couldn't do that, you could just times the tops. 12 times 2 is 24, and then 19 times 7, 133, if you don't have a scientific calculator. Then it says write it as a percentage. Okay, so to convert between fraction and percentage, I times by 100. So I'm going to times that by 100 and then press S to D, and it tells me that that is 18.045, and I'm not going to round it, I'm just going to say, right, I'm just leaving it at that, percent. Okay, it says round to the nearest percent, so that's going to be 18%. Okay, let's see if that sort of makes sense. Well, they're getting the biggest share, and he's getting the smaller share of that biggest share. So yeah, that sort of does make sense. That sort of does make sense. Not an easy question, that, because we're mixing fractions and ratios, but that's generally what the exam will do, is it will make things a lot harder and a lot more tricky. Okay, and this is also 4 marks, so if you just showed their share of it, you're probably picking up 1 or 2 marks. If you show that he had 2/7 of that, okay, which you should be able to do, that's another 1, maybe 2 marks. Okay, so you could potentially get maybe 2 or 3 marks without necessarily understanding this last little bit. Okay, let's move on. Question 23. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Right, I imagine you are all experts at this because teachers love teaching it, students like answering it because it's quite simple when you get your head around it. If you don't have a method already for this, or you actually genuinely don't know how to do this, then listen up for this next minute or so. Write the number first, okay? Split it into 2 numbers. Now, I always pick 2 if I can, which I can on this. 2 times what is 40? Well, 2 times 20 is 40. If you get to a prime number, that means one number that you can't split anymore. The only thing I can split that into is 1 and 2. Well, I'd be here all day splitting 1 and 2s into 1 and 2s into 1 and 2s. So I circle it. That's prime. This one's not prime. I can do another 2. So I'm going to do that. That leaves me with 10. 10's not prime. I can do another 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Now 5 is prime, okay? Only 1 and 5 I can split that in 2. It says write it in index form. It just means instead of 2 times 2 times 2, we're going to write 2 to the power of 3 times 5. And that's the answer. How simple is that? Okay, brilliant. Let's move on. Question 24. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, as probably a lot of you know already, trial and improvement is doomed. There is no more trial and improvement on the exam. So it could be that they will ask this on the calculator. In fact, I would massively recommend you practice the trial and improvement. If you don't know much about it, I would recommend you do it. It's 4 marks normally, sometimes 3, but mostly 4. And it's actually pretty simple. It has to be on the calculator paper. Okay, so they won't have asked it paper 1, so chances of it coming up are high. So to do trial and improvement, basically we're just guessing numbers and seeing how close to the answer we get. If the answer we get is too high, we just pick a smaller number. It tells the solution between 2 and 3, so that gives us a massive head start. So, first number to pick, well, we don't have no idea whether 2 and 3, whereabouts it is. So I'm just going to split it down the middle. I'm going to do 2.5. Okay, so I'm going to type in 2.5, then I'm going to press this button here on the scientific calculator. And it looks like this. Okay, and then I'm going to click 3, because I want cubed. Okay, then I'm going to press the cursor key right, then do times 2.5 and then squared button, which is the same as that one, just it has a little 2 on it. Then I'm going to press equals, and it says that my answer is 97.6. This is not looking good. I've pressed times, I'm supposed to click subtract. What a numpty, right. Okay, ignore that. I get 9.375. Right, my head's screwed on again. Okay, now that's too high, and I've written that in the comment section. I'm doing very well with this question. So, 9.375. The comment is supposed to be that that's too high. Now, if I get the answer that's too high there, then I need to pick a smaller number. So I'm going to pick a smaller number. Now that was close, so I'm going to pick 2.4. So I'm going to do the same again, 2.4 cubed, take away 2.4 squared, equals, this time I get 8.064, which is too low. So I know my answer is somewhere between 2.5 and 2.4. Now if I show you a diagram here, and if I put 2.4 on here and 2.5 on here, now our answer is somewhere between those two. In fact, our answer will be either this one or this one, because it says it wants it to one decimal place. Okay, so it doesn't want it any more specific than either 2.4 or 2.5. Now some teachers that I have seen in their lessons say, well, it's closer to 2.5, so just write 2.5. That's not always the case. It's not always the case, because these aren't linear relationships. Okay, these are curves, so it could look closer to 1 but actually not be closer to it. There is one point here which decides whether it rounds to 2.4 or 2.5, and it's the halfway point. Halfway between 2.4 and 2.5 is 2.45, and that's what they're looking for you to finish this off with, 2.45. So let's type that in, 2.45 cubed, take away 2.45 squared, and I get the answer 8.7036 blah blah blah. Okay, and that is too low. So we know that our answer is somewhere along here, okay, because this is too low and this is too high, so it's somewhere along here. No matter where it is along here, it will always round to 2.5. And that's how you get 4 marks rather than 2 or 3. You get a mark if you pick a value between 2 and 3 and get the answer. You get another mark if you trap it between two numbers, which I did. You get a next mark if you successfully do the halfway point, and then you get the next mark for identifying that it's 2.5. Okay, those are generally what the marks are for. So make sure you do all those steps. And don't worry, if it takes you a while, when you do 2.5, if that's too low, and you go 2.6, then 2.7, then 2.8, then 2.9, okay, that's fine. Okay, maximum you'll do is 5, because obviously 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, etc. Okay, and then don't panic about doing too many, that's not a problem. Okay, let's move on to question 25. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, it's really important with these questions when you're describing transformations that the first mark is for naming the transformation. The second and possibly the third mark is for describing it, so saying how big it's enlarged or it's rotated 90 degrees anti-clockwise or whatever. But the first mark is for the type of transformation. There are 4. Enlargement makes it go bigger or smaller. There's rotation, which is flipping it around. There is reflection, that's with the mirror line. And there is translation, which is this one. Translation's one that people forget. Okay, translation just means you've moved it. Okay, I don't know why I put an M there. Translation, it's exactly like English to French, or English to German translation. It's spelt the same. Gehen Sie geradeaus, yeah? Or whatever. Continuez tout droit, whatever. Right, anyway. That's enough of my bad French and German. Okay, I pick a point on A, I pick a point on B, and this time I want to get the second mark, which is saying, right, okay, it's moved, but how is it moved? Well, I can't go directly there, because how am I going to write that down? Well, I could do an angle or whatever, but that's not going to work. I show how far right and how far down. So I do it with jumps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I had to go 8 right and 1 2 down. Now, in my early years of teaching, I didn't do jumps, and people were constantly getting it wrong. Okay, they'd count the lines or whatever, or yeah, they'd count the lines between them and get 9 right instead of 8 right. Since I've started telling students, do your jumps, they've never made a mistake. So if you don't physically do your jumps, please do. It makes it so much easier to always get the right answer rather than mostly getting the right answer. Okay, don't forget also, if you start at the top of the shape, you've got to end at the top of the shape. Okay, if I ended down here, I would not get the right answer. What I always try and do is pick the top rightest point. Now I pick the top point, and if there's 2, I always pick the right one. Okay, it's up to you how you do this, but try and make sure you pick the same point. Okay, you will lose marks if you don't. Okay, excellent. Let's move it on. Question 26. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, something about these exchange rates is if we've got £1 to $1.38. I don't know why I did that line so big. To get from £1 from pounds to dollars is easy. I times by 1.38. But to go the other way, to get from dollars to pounds, I do the inverse of that. I do the opposite of it. I divide by 1.38. Okay? So this question is about laptops in different countries, and it obviously wants me to do it in pounds, but on the question paper it will give you a choice. Because this was a self-marking paper, I had to make the choice for the people doing the paper, but on the actual exam paper you can write, so you've got a real person looking at it. Okay, so I'm going to convert the dollars into pounds. So 3360, and according to this, to get from dollars to pounds, I divide by 1.38. Okay, 3360 divide 1.38, and I get 2434.78. Okay. Now, it costs £2,800 in the UK, and I've rounded that to nearest pence, by the way. And it costs £2,434.78 in the US. So we know it's cheaper in the USA because it does tell us in the question, but it says how much cheaper. So on my calculator, I do 2800, and I take away the 2434.78. So what I could do, because the answer's still in my calculator, I could do 2800, take away, and then ANS, which gives us the previous answer. It's the bottom right next to the equal sign on the Casio calculators. Press equals, and I get £365.22, because the 1 goes up to a 2, because the next numbers are 7. So it's £365.22. And that's it. That's how simple it is. Now, you want to just check here, the amount of dollars is more than the pounds. So when I convert it, it should go downwards. Well, it was 3,360 and it got converted to 2,434. So that looks right. Okay, so that's in dollars and then that's in pounds. So just check that it makes sense. Check your answer makes sense. Right, let's move on to question 27. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, now you are given 2 lengths on a right angled triangle and you're asked for a third length. So this is Pythagoras. If you have your own methods for this, please feel free to use them. If you have reached this stage and not have a clue how to do this question, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way of doing it. And it involves 3 steps. Step 1, What you have to do in step 1 is just square all the sides. So I'm going to square that, 35 squared, 1225. Okay, 61 squared, okay, is 3721. Okay, that's step 1 done. Step 2, add or subtract. Okay, now this is the only choice you're going to have to make. You're either adding or subtracting those values. Just a little bit of background on a right angled triangle. One of these sides has a name, has a very special name. The side opposite the right angle has a special name of the hypotenuse. The reason it's given a special name, hypotenuse, is because it has to be the longest side. So, if I subtract these in step 2, my number here will be smaller than these two. Okay, it won't be the longest. If I add these at this point, my answer here will be the longest side. So if I'm looking for the longest side, I'm adding. If it gives me the hypotenuse, the one opposite the right angle, if it gives me that longest one, then I'm subtracting. So on this one I'm adding. So I'm going to do 1225 plus 3721. Okay, so 1225 plus 3721, and that gives me 4946. 4946. Okay, step 3. Now that looks a ridiculously large value. That's 35, that's 61, and that's 4,946. That's too big. So step 3 is the final bit. You've got to square root it. So I'm going to press square root, answer equals, and it says that it is 70.3278 blah blah blah. The last thing, it's not an official step 4, but the last thing is just check your answer. This is 35, this is 61, and this is 70.3278. That's the longest, and it's opposite the right angle. If you get a number smaller here, then go back to step 2 and you probably subtracted instead of added, or the other way around. Okay, so step 2 is your only choice. Okay, that's the only place where you've got a choice. But you can look at the answer and go, oh, hang on, I made the wrong choice there, and you can just go back and change it. So to one decimal place, that would be 70.3. And that's how easy Pythagoras is. Some teachers talk about a squared plus b squared equals c squared and rearranging equations. Brilliant if you understand that. If you don't, just do the 3 steps. Okay, this late in the day, just do the 3 steps. And you'll probably pick up maybe 1 or 2 marks, even if you get it wrong, but you've shown the steps that you've done, that you've squared them, you've added or subtracted them, and you've square rooted your answer. Right, let's move on to the last question. If you'd like to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so mean, estimating the mean. Alright, I've got some really easy steps for this. And again, if you've got your own way, fine, stick to with it. I need to have another line down here for my way, which is alright, because I can just draw it. Now, what I want to do is times these together, and I want to create an fx column. I just call it fx. Actually, x is t in this question, but I always call it fx. It's just easier. I have no idea why. Now, the problem is, how do I do 0 to 20 times 9? Well, the calculator doesn't understand 0 to 20, okay? So I need to pick a number to represent 0 to 20. If I picked 0, well, that would be unfair, because that would be saying that all those values that are somewhere between 0 and 20 are 0. If I pick 20, again, that would be unfair. It would be inflating all of them. So we pick what's called the midpoint. It's just a number to represent all these, and it's the one right in the middle, so 10. If you don't know how to find the midpoint, 20 and 40, just add 20 and 40 together and divide by 2, and that gives me 30. And you can probably see the rest of these. That's 50, that's 70, and then that's 90. Okay, it's halfway between 80 and 100, it's 90. Then I'm going to use this midpoint to find my fx. And to do fx, I times them together. Now each of these values we're saying is 10, and there's 9 of them. So when I add them up, I will get 9 times 10. Do it on a calculator. Okay, you don't need to, obviously. 90. 5 values, and we're using 30 to represent them. So 5 times 30, again, don't need to do it on the calculator, but it's there, so you might as well use it. 15 values, which we're saying are all 50. Let's times them together, 750. 14 values, which we're saying all are 70, and so that's 980. And then finally 24 values, which we're saying are 90, so times them together, it's 2160. Brilliant. So we've added up all of these values separately into 5 places there. But we want to add all of these up. So we do the sum, which I use sigma, sum of fx, okay, which is 90 plus 150 plus 750 plus 980 plus 2160, and that is 4130. So I add up this column, and I need to find out how many there were altogether. So there's 2 ways of doing this. You can do sum of f, which is these added together, so 9 plus 5 plus 15 plus 14 plus 24 equals 67. Now you might wonder why I said there's 2 ways of doing that. Reading the question is the second way. Okay, already told you there was 67. But anyway, now to find the mean, we add up all the numbers, which is this bit here, and we divide them by the amount of numbers, which is this bit here. So swap them over. Oh my goodness, those arrows are dodgy. Now, I always make a big deal of swapping these over because the amount of people I've seen that have not swapped them over is unreal. 67 divided by 4130 is a common mistake. Don't make it, always swap them over. When I type that into a calculator, it's 61.64179. Once it's 2 decimal places, so 61.64. It's 2 decimal places. Remember, do not add up this column. This midpoint column here is just there for working out, so don't add this bit up. Okay, a lot of people do. Alright, so if you do it, you're not alone, but you only add up the frequencies and what I've called the fx column, which is probably should be called the ft column. Okay, but whatever, you know, living on the edge. And that is us finished. That is the foundation prediction for paper 2 finish. Now, a lot of you already know that I do demon questions. So if you have finished that on this site, you've gone through all the questions, you're happy with it, please try the demon questions. I always include C grade ones, which are on the foundation. I do go to B and then A and A star. But if you just do the first question on the demon questions, they are going to help you out a lot. I'm going to do some other tutorials on how to use a calculator and things like that on the site. If you have suggestions of things you want me to go through, either for demon questions or more general, then please message me and let me know. I'm more than happy to do things. The other thing I'll say is there is a backup site now on the website. So what happened last time we last paper 1, on the paper 1, the day before it, the Wednesday, is so many people were visiting the site, which is great. The site collapsed and died. And I think it can cope with an awful lot of people, so I dread to think how many people tried to access it to make it do that. In fact, the hosting company were in complete denial, and then they saw it and went, how the heck have you managed to do that? So this time around I've set up a second site, and this time it's my own computer somewhere in the country. Okay, it's got my name on it. The site is exactly the same URLs, exactly the same web addresses as all the links you'll see everywhere else, except instead of .com it's .uk. So if you can't access this paper with the .com site, just switch it for a .uk and you should be able to access it. Okay. The only thing with the .uk site is you can't log in, you can't talk on the forums, anything like that. Okay, so use the .com site if it's available. If for whatever reason you can't access it, just switch the URL to .uk. I will put both links in the description. The UK site I'll put as a backup link. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed it, please click like. If you really enjoyed it, please click subscribe. Thank you very much.